You're listening to Scribble Talk Teaching, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and I'll be sitting down with the industry leaders to dive deep into the topics that business-winning professionals like you can use to help grow your skills and your business. Today's guest is Louise Dentice. Louise has already been featured in our Scribble Talk podcast in episode number 146. But let me continue in introducing Louise, just in case if you haven't listened to that episode. Louise Dentice is head of bids and proposals at chapmanbdsp and is also the research and resources lead in the 1,500 plus popular group, the Women in Bids and Proposals. And as a part of APMP, she's also been a top 40 under 40 award winner. She holds a practitioner certification and also holds a project management certification. So while Louise was here, she talked a lot about, not just about a career, but he also talked about her parallel careers. Let's dive deep into today's topic, which is the answer is yes, if. So to talk more about that, welcome Louise to Scribble Talk.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Louise, I know you were a guest just before Easter or March time, Louise, and there was a lot of interesting questions about your parallel careers, both on bids and in arts, and how you managed to be successful in both these pathways, among many other commitments. Talk us through, give us a very quick, short introduction about your role and your arts, and then we'll just go, and also WIBAP, and we'll just go from the rest of it.
Okay, short introduction. All right, so I am a sculptor as well as a bids professional. So I studied sculpture at university, and since then I have been practicing, a practicing artist, exhibiting regularly in New Zealand, Europe, and well, China recently last year, in Tokyo. So I'm very prolific, I guess. Well, I regularly exhibit. And alongside that, for the last 12 years, I have had a career in bids and proposals. So I call them my parallel career pathways. I've been working in marketing, advertising and project management for 20 years. So, but the last 12 has been bids focused, if you like. So alongside that, as you mentioned, I am on the committee for Women in Bids and Proposals, WIBAP, and I am the resources and research lead there. I also sit on the committee for the British Art Medal Society and the Medal Artists of New Zealand committee. And outside of that, I've number of other hobbies, social life, renovating a house. I get asked to speak a bit, write a bit, just because I've got design skills. I end up doing everybody's wedding invitations and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, I guess is that enough of a wrap up?
I totally, Louise. I think it's unbelievable how you keep your skills and how you keep your interest plus your life around your skills and interests. That's beautiful. So let's talk about this act of balancing and these competing priorities, how you are keeping things moving. Start with some very basic foundations, Louise, and then we'll go for some specific strategies as we go along.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess the thing is, the first thing is understanding what the priorities are at a really high level. So, you know, for me, my employment, my work career as head of bids and proposals management professional, that is my priority. I get a lot of satisfaction and yeah, from that role. I'm really invested in the company that I work for, and have a lot of respect and autonomy there. So for me, that is my priority. It doesn't take priority over my relationships and things like that, but in terms of the activities that I do, so bids and the committees and so forth, I've prioritized for me my actual employment. So that's where I get my fulfillment, and I think that that's important. You can't give all of these things equal time and effort. There's just simply not enough time in the day to do that. So you've got to prioritize, and for me, that's what I've decided in that high level is that it's my job that I prioritize. So that helps me immediately structure and give me a framework for the decisions I make around how I balance my time. And I guess then the next thing is to understand what you're actually trying to achieve in each of those things, and then the activities that are required to enable you to achieve those things, if that makes sense.
Totally, Louise, totally. And then obviously, you made it sound so simple, Louise, but but you might follow a set pattern, or without you realizing, you might have certain way of working. Talk us through some of the few elements that you use yourself to do all these parallel careers, as you call them.
All right. Well, as I said, it's about understanding what I'm trying to achieve in each of those things, and the activities or actions that I need to undertake to achieve them. So that's the starting point. Having lists is absolutely critical to this. I know a lot of people feel bogged down by lists, but I actually feel they give me freedom, because they mean that it takes the pressure off actually having to remember all the things. So once I've decided in each of the elements, this is what I'm trying to achieve, these are the things I need to do to achieve them, I capture those through lists. And then I go through, employ quite a variety of techniques actually to make sure I'm implementing them in the right way. So as an example, at work, every day, me and my team have what we call the daily stand-up, which I know is a common bid technique, where we basically get together and work out what the priorities, the immediate small priorities are for the day or the week, what we need to achieve those. Are there any dependencies, like am I waiting on content from so-and-so, or do I need to provide content to somebody else in order for them to do their part of it? So it's just that quick, that reset every day. All right, what is it I'm trying to get out of the day? And I actually employ that technique when I'm working on my art as well. So I sit down to do something, or I'm like, okay, this evening I'm going to work on this. Okay, what am I going to work on? What am I trying to achieve? Is anybody waiting for me on anything? What are the dependencies here? Do I owe content to somebody? Just resetting every day, and making sure you've got a forum to do that. So the stand-ups are a really good way to do that. Oh, there's so many more. Do you want me to just keep talking?
No. One time, so that listeners can actually take some action. Daily stand-ups means you're right. I think you have a core career, which is set of bids, and ensuring that gets done gives you time to go and do more. As people always complain they're working long, they're working late, even on doing their core job. But daily stand-up is a mechanism that you use to ensure that the key priorities are addressed and on a day-to-day basis, and that's get connected to some big objectives for the week or the quarter. So once the daily stand-up is done, Louise, what else do you do?
Okay, so I guess in line with that, what you've got to have is really good plans. You've got to break down, so you might have a bid due, you've got to break that down into manageable tasks. That helps with the daily stand-up, so you can say, okay, it's these 3 things I'm going to do. You've got to be really organized. You have to be diligent. You know, in bids, you know, we're working with subject matter experts in the business who are leading on live projects. They're in and out of client meetings all the time. They're away at conferences. They're doing all these things. So we've got to keep track of the correspondence. We've got to know better than anybody else what's in those documents. We're the eyes and ears. So being diligent is really important. And being organized in terms of managing, having your bid plans and managing those things, and communicating so that everybody knows what's expected of them and when, summarizing, just that regular communication. All of those things help to make sure that you can deliver what you're aiming to deliver when you do your daily stand-up. You know, so those things have to happen alongside that. Those are really important, so I just thought it was worth mentioning that. But I guess in terms of techniques, I mean, all of those things I just mentioned I employ to everything that I do, whether it's the committees I'm on or my art projects. But I guess the next technique I'm going to talk about, I've called it flex and swing, and it's an attitude really. And what I mean by that is it's a flexible approach which allows you to put the effort in where it's required. So if I've got a number of high priority bids on, and my work, you know, I'm required to put in a lot of effort. Sometimes that's time, but actually I don't do a lot of overtime because of manage the workload, the way I've just spoken about it. But where the effort is required, I put it in. So I flex, but I also am very attuned to what's going on. You can't keep your foot on the pedal in all of these areas all the time. So I respond to the demands. So where you know, you're required, you know, there might be a focus on getting win rate up or converting some strategic bids. I put the effort in there, but then I step back when I need to, and I might swing and put that effort into my artwork or into the committee, one of the committees. It's like, not sure if that's the best way to describe it. Do you understand what I mean? Like it's a real flexible approach. It's moving with the demands of what you're doing. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense, Louise. Again, you know what, there's a you just need to, as the word says, is flex and swing. You know, you just need to go with the swing or go with the time. But again, when you start to employ this attitude, Louise, how easy or for you to kind of embed yourself in this kind of attitude? Was there any bottlenecks, any barriers? What do you think people should be aware of?
It's actually quite hard to do. Like, it's actually quite hard to take your foot off the pedal. It's like once you gear up and you get momentum, and you know, if I've been working on, because we categorize our bids, so platinum, gold, silver, bronze. If I've been working on a few platinum bids and gold bids, I'm in that high gear. I'm all switched on. I'm like, manage this, do this, you know, juggling all these balls at once. It's actually really hard to dial it back. You know, sometimes you can't, you know, and this is something that I'm still learning, I think. You know, you've got to read the room. We recently in my workplace had a number of wins come in, like all after each other. So months and sometimes years of hard work had just paid off, and we just secured all of these amazing projects. So it was a fantastic feeling. And I actually sat down with a member of my team who was still putting in the really high level, high geared approach. And I was like, you got to take the foot off, your foot off the pedal, like read the room, the people we're working with, that pressure to convert wasn't there in the same way. It's hard. You've got to kind of read the signals around you, gear up when you need to, put in that effort, show that you're reliable, show that you can be trusted, that you're invested, do all of that stuff, but you can't do it 100% of the time, and especially not if you want to juggle other aspects of your life. So you've got to read the signs, put in the effort where it's required, but learn what level of effort is required. And I think that is that's something that's actually taken me a long time to learn. Like, I always thought that I had to own an action all the way through. That if somebody said to me, I really want you to, your ideas on an article for this, I used to think, well, I have to scope out the article. I can't go back to this person until this is done. But now my approach would be, here's a few bullet points. Is that on the right lines? Have you got any feedback on this? I think so-and-so might be good to feedback and collaborate. So all of a sudden, it's not this massive task. It's getting a ball rolling. It's, and it's not all sitting with me.
Well said.
Am I making sense?
I think, Louise, I'm sure, like, while you were talking, I was reflecting on how good I was doing the flex and swing attitude myself. I mean, like, yes, it might not work all the time, but it's worth trying. I mean, like, even if it helps you a little bit on one particular work that you do, I think that's a great one. But having that antenna, as we call it, to scan around the room and say, read between the lines and understand what's a priority, what's not a priority. It's a lifelong learning, Louise. I'm glad that you started to employ, and glad that you're finding some rewards on doing this. And I'm sure listeners will be able to take that part and try themselves. So we talked about stand-up calls, we talked about flex and swing. What's the next one then, Louise?
Well, I guess it's worth saying that I'm, with all these aspects that I'm involved in, because I have to take a flex and swing approach, because as I said, I can't give all of these 100% of my attention and effort and energy all the time. So what that means is that I'm not very consistent in terms of the input that I put into these groups. So it's about making people understand what you're able to commit. Setting those parameters is really important, even around work. I'm not available tonight, I can't stay, sorry. Or around the committees as well. So I'm not someone who goes, okay, I'm spending 5 hours on WIBAP this week, or every week, or even once a month. What I do is, where I do have the time, I might jot down a number of bullets. On one of my committees for the arts, I might just grab a bunch of images, write down some ideas, send something out. Like, I'll do a flurry of activity where I have the capacity to do so. But it means I'm not consistently going 5 hours on this, 5 hours on that, 5 hours on that. So I guess it comes back to the communication, which is regular, managing expectations, and there's a couple of bits that feed into that. So one is what I call chunking time. I don't really know if I like that term, but somebody told me it's what it is. So it's where I go, okay, tonight I'm going to give this 2 hours and I'm going to do these 3 things, and that's the parameter that I set for that. And the other thing is what we just kind of talked about, is knowing when to say when. So you don't have to do the whole piece. You can send out comments, send out ideas, touch base. Sometimes that's enough to keep balls rolling into help collaboration, or so it's not just all sitting with you. But I guess the key thing is around managing expectations is what we've called this podcast title. The answer is yes, if. Should I go into that?
Totally. Yes, please, Louise.
Okay. So when you asked me if I could do this podcast, I said, yes, if it can be in June, because I don't have any capacity till then. People talk a lot about learning to say no, and yes, that saying no is important. But I think when you work in bids, whether it's for yourself or for an employer, you are providing a service, and you can't say no to everything when you're in that position, because you've got to keep your business going, you've got to keep yourself employed. And also, I'm someone who likes to do a lot of things, so I don't want to just have my day job as a bids professional. I want to also be an artist. I want to contribute to the communities that I'm a part of, so actively contribute to WIBAP and to British Art Medal Society. I want to do those things. So my answer is yes, if. And another example of how I employ that is on working on a bid the other week with one of our directors. He wanted to include a load of content at the last minute, and he wasn't going to be able to have time to review until day of submission, and he said, can we do it? And I said, yes, if you provide me with XYZ in this time frame, if it's in this format, if it's all typed up, if you promise to prioritize it in this order. And he agreed to that. And what ended up happening on the day was he got through the first two of the items in his priority order before the submission was due. And that was fine, because we'd already agreed that that was what was going to happen. So he didn't come away from it thinking that I'd said, no, there's no way we can do that. We came away with a plan which where he understood the expectation and also the consequence. And I guess that's the thing. If you say the answer is yes, if you don't mind that this other action that I'm doing will take a back seat, the answer is yes, if you're happy to call the client and ask for an extension. You know what I mean? So it's making sure that everybody is involved, they understand the consequence and the impact, and it allows you to do the things you love, I guess.
Well said, Louise. I mean, like, the whole purpose of this talk is, we all have a choice. I mean, like, I rely on, okay, there are certain things that I want to do, but there are certain things that comes along my way. But as you rightly said, I do say yes. And I find my time. I acted in my first drama as a lead actor in Wimbledon Theatre here recently. I never thought I'm a drama. It just happened, where the scriptwriter came in and the person, the lead person fell COVID, and then because I know the script in and out, so they just asked me, and am I no, it just happened as you rightly said. But did I plan for it? No. But as you rightly said, certain elements you would want it, like in your case, the arts is super important for you, so you can carve your time out and you could prioritize it. But still, that discipline of chunking time, it's and also managing expectations as well, because while you're doing that one, obviously there is an impact on the other things, which means it might not be working 100% right, but you should know what good enough looks like, and as long as it's good enough, move on. So we talked about the answer is yes, if the stand up, the flex and swing, chunking time, quick wins in managing expectations. Anything else, Louise? Why do you think people should do this?
Well, I think some of these techniques might work for some people. They're not going to work for everybody, and there's probably more that I do than I realize I do. But I guess the reason, the way I've been able to come up with all of these things that work for me is because I understand my own personal drivers. And I think that that's what people need to think about, and what is it that drives them. So I am deadline driven, and I suspect that a lot of people in bids are. So I need a deadline, whether it's client imposed or self-imposed. And when it's self-imposed, in order to keep to that deadline, I give myself consequences or rewards to meet that. So, you know, if I'm working just on a body of work without an exhibition, so there's no external deadline, I make one up and I say, I have to have this finished by the 23rd of June. If not, I'm not going to be able to go to that play. Or I'm going to buy myself that necklace if I get that done by then. You know, something that, you know, so, you know, I play to that driver, because I know that I respond to it. And once I've got that deadline, I work backwards. What do I need to achieve it? What are the activities that I need to do? How do I plan them out? When do I need to do it? How much time is involved? And I just employ all of those project management techniques that people do. So whatever it is, I employ it. And that's another reason why the idea of quick wins works, because quick wins is, you know, you might be working on a long-term deadline, but the thing is, I'm deadline driven. I get that satisfaction from getting something off my list, from closing something out. So I will save up a bunch of small actions, and I'll give myself half an hour to close them out. Each action, if it's under 2 minutes, and I'll just, you know, flick through them, and just to give myself that that I need. So it's understanding that. And I'm also a finisher, and so I have this finisher mindset. So if I start something, I've got to finish it. And so I play to that, and some of the ways I do that is by, I'll come and sit down at my desk in the morning and go, okay, today I've got to send that email, I've got to finish this draft, and I need to set up a folder for that. So I'll open all those things on my desktop, and I know that I will not, that it will play on my mind, that it will actually upset me if I don't get those things done. So I play to that mindset. I make it work for me. I make it work for me as a motivator. And I know everybody's motivators are different, but I would just say, find what yours are. And maybe some of these techniques we've talked about will work for you. But there's many others, you know, so yeah, find what your driver is, and yeah, play to it.
Totally. I think that's really helpful, Louise. I think Scribble Talk listeners can use, you know, within Scribble portal, we have the 7 growth tools, or there is at least 20 plus goal setting related templates that you could download. Totally. You can do it, understand, reflect. So once you know these are some of your goals, both professional and personal goals, as Louise mentioned, then you could decide, there's a time blocking webinar as well, so that tells you how you can block your time accordingly. As Louise also mentioned, that flexing up and swing attitude means not always it will work around what you want, but by having certain elements that are happening all the time, and tackle it with the daily stand-up calls, chunking time where you know things needs to happen, or there is some flexibility, just work around it. But most importantly, get your quick wins, celebrate your success, and manage your expectations, and keep moving. And it's a brilliant topic. Thank you, Louise. And also, as you rightly said, you know, being a bid leader for an organization, at the same time volunteering for WIBAP, the Women in Bids and Proposals, also taking up you know, leadership roles within Art Society, and also Medal Artist of New Zealand. Plus, I know you do a lot more, like, you know, joining this podcast and sharing your, all means, you know, it's the fun step. First step, once you start to do it, you know, once you start to share, I'm sure it makes you feel better as well. But that's it. Louise, any final thoughts before we close the episode?
I guess it's just worth saying that you know, I've got all these techniques. I do employ them. They do largely work for me, but you know, we don't always get the balance right. So I just wanted to acknowledge that sometimes the balance shifts, sometimes that pressure that I find such a driver, sometimes it does cross that fine line into stress. Sometimes I get overcommitted in more than one of those aspects and I've got pressure to deliver. And you've got to be able to recognize it when it happens, which sometimes you need somebody else to actually point it out to you, because sometimes I'm not the best. You can't always see it for yourself when it's happening. So that's just, to be mindful of. Like, it's great to be able to do all these things, to juggle all of this stuff, but be aware that it can take its toll. You sometimes don't get the balance right, and just make sure that you've got that support network and have ways and things in place to be able to address it if the balance doesn't shift in your favor.
Well said, Louise. Well said. Again, having this additional avenues also kind of gives you kind of a stress buster thing as well. You might, that you could release your anger, or release your whatever the stress that you have, because that you can do a sculpting, that you are sharing in a podcast, that you're talking, even that mere being volunteering, talking to others also means, hey, I have the same battle as you, so which means you are not alone. But please do try, please do add anything, and reach out to Louise if you want to pick her brains on arts and sculpting, and also anything that you want to plan. Hey, I'm trying to do things. I want to know more, etc. I'm sure Louise will be happy to help you. So thank you, Louise. Thanks for joining Scribble Talk Teachings. Thanks for sharing as always. Stay healthy, keep inspiring us, and I'm sure we'll talk again, Louise. Thank you again.
Thank you.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.